There's something that the rail systems in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and San Francisco all have in common. All of them exist with the help of a Democratic president from Texas. So, with President's Day coming up, as of the time of publishing this video, we may as well talk about how a Democratic president from Texas was a big proponent of public transit. That president was Lyndon B. Johnson. A major legislative undertaking of his was his Great Society initiatives, which were focused on poverty, racism, urban renewal, and so much more. The most famous of his Great Society efforts was African American civil rights legislation. But another of President Johnson's Great Society initiatives was providing funding for public transit. That was provided for in the Urban Mass Transportation Act of 1964. That funding amounted to hundreds of millions of dollars. $375 million in 1964 money, to be exact. That would be about $3.8 billion in today's money. That money assisted in covering up to half the cost of transit improvements. Money that multiple metro areas used to build up their transit systems, including rail systems. But let's hold on a moment. Why would a president from Texas, at the peak of the building of highways, want to support public transit? Well, it turns out that highways didn't solve traffic problems. Rather, traffic was as bad as ever, probably because building more and wider roads led to more people driving, which leads to more traffic jams and a perceived need for even more roads and even wider roads yet. I made this chart a while back to explain that phenomenon. Because of that, traffic jams were seen as a problem that had to be solved, rather than an accepted part of daily reality. And what President Johnson said when he signed the Urban Mass Transportation Act of 1964 into law reflects that fact. He said, quote, "The members of this Congress have renewed our attack on the most familiar symbol of modern urban civilization, the traffic jam. They have renewed our determination to do something about that daily horror that is broadcast to us from the helicopters flying in the air every morning and afternoon, known as the rush hour." End quote. So, if we're honest, President Johnson was simply responding to a problem. That problem being lots of traffic on the roads. A problem that was becoming increasingly bad. And the transit funding provided to try solving that problem was critical for rail systems such as the ones in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and the San Francisco Bay Area. So critical that there is a whole term for rail systems built in this era. That term, Great Society Metros. What is distinct about these Great Society Metros, as opposed to ones built decades prior in places such as New York, Chicago, and Boston, is that they were meant to serve not just the central city, but also its suburbs. In a way, they're heavy rail systems built for the suburban sprawl that occurred particularly after World War II. Doing that would prove to massively increase the usefulness of these systems, as a number of stops outside the central cities would become very busy in their individual systems. As a result, frequent rail transit became something that people outside the central cities were interested in. It made rail transit into something that post-war suburban communities had an interest in too, I would argue. Which was smart on LBJ's part, both politically and otherwise. Obviously, it was smart politically, because with more people moving into the suburbs, he needed a transportation bill that would benefit voters in the suburbs. But it was also smart practically, because with more people moving to the suburbs, you would be missing a lot of people if the public transit you funded didn't go to the suburbs. Now, This legislation was great and all, but what are the chances of having another wave of massive investment in transit funding? And if we did have another massive investment in transit funding, where should that money go and where would it go? In terms of the chances of another wave of investment, I'm a little pessimistic in the short term. Our politics are rather polarized as of the time of my writing the script for this video. And even if they weren't so polarized, remember how I said that the Urban Mass Transportation Act of 1964 cost $3.8 billion in today's money? That isn't even enough to build a three-stop Phase 2 extension of the 2nd Avenue subway in New York City. America seems to have lost all ability to build heavy rail tunnels for reasonable prices. So, even if there were an LBJ like commitment to urban and suburban mass transit, that investment is likely to not go nearly as far as it did in the 1960s. Man, I need to do a video at some point talking about why building heavy rail in the United States has become so expensive and how it can be made cheaper. I think it is important to express those thoughts because the more affordable our transit is to build, the more high quality transit this country will get. But, assuming that the political climate gets better and we become better at building metro systems for reasonable costs, where should that funding go? And where would that funding go? Personally, I think it should go to places that need to alleviate car traffic the most. So, places like Atlanta, Houston, and Los Angeles, to name a few. As to where it would go, I think a smart Congress and president would have the money go to projects that are in current or potential swing states. Why? Because that way, when an election year comes and politicians are trying to win votes in key states, they can point to rail projects they advocated for and funded as evidence that their political party is improving the lives of their voters in tangible ways. Projects in Philadelphia, Detroit, Dallas, Houston, Atlanta, Phoenix, and Las Vegas would all fit that profile. But I'm not sure a Congress or president would be smart enough to think like that. But, assuming we ever did get an LBJ like infusion of transit funding, where do you think that funding should go? Let me know in the comment section below. Make sure to also leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content on imagining better mass transit in the United States. Thank you, and have a good day.